The gate was never meant to hold. Everyone on the tactical overlay knew it. Every model, every probability curve, every cold, calculated simulation. Lieutenant Mark Hale watched the numbers collapse on his visor and felt the familiar, sickening certainty settle into his gut. Atherin Gate is compromised, command repeated over the comms, voice clipped and emotionless. All units fall back to secondary defensive lines. Repeat, all units fall back. The Sarah civilians were still running, not soldiers, not trained auxiliaries, families, elders, children whose crystalline skin reflected the red emergency lights as they stumbled across shattered stone and broken tech. Mark turned, already moving, shouting orders to his squad. Cover the evac route, suppressive fire now. They obeyed, they always did, except Ryan Cole didn't move. Sergeant, Mark barked, fall back, that's an order. Ryan stood at the center of the gate, rifle braced against his shoulder, body angled toward the breach where enemy fire punched sparks out of ancient stone. His armor was scorched, his left sleeve torn and dark with blood, but his stance was steady in a way that made Mark's chest tighten. There are still people behind us, Ryan said. That's not your call, Mark snapped. Command's pulling us out. We don't hold this position. Ryan didn't look back. I know. A grenade detonated against the gate's inner arch, shockwave rattling Mark's teeth. A chunk of crystalline stone collapsed, narrowly missing a group of fleeing civilians. Ryan adjusted his grip. Sergeant, Mark said, quieter now. That gate falls in minutes. You stay, you die. Ryan finally turned. His face was smeared with soot and blood, eyes rimmed red from smoke and exhaustion. He looked like hell. He looked terrified, and he looked resolved. If we all fall back, he said, they don't make it out. Mark swallowed. This isn't hero shit, Ryan continued. I'm not trying to be brave. I'm not trying to make a point. Another burst of enemy fire screamed past, close enough to scorch Ryan's shoulder. I just can't walk away. Command cut back in, sharper now. Sergeant Cole, this is a direct order. Fall back immediately. Ryan exhaled. Negative, he said, I'm holding. Mark stared at him, disbelief warring with something darker. Ryan, get them out, Ryan said. That's all I'm asking. The line went silent. For half a second, Mark thought command might override, send someone to drag Ryan back by force. They didn't. Unit Bravo, command said finally, voice flat. Execute retreat. Sergeant Cole acknowledged. Acknowledged, not approved, not forgiven, just recorded. Mark hesitated one last time. Ryan met his eyes. Go. Mark turned and ran. Ryan lost track of time almost immediately. Minutes blurred into something shapeless and brutal. He fired until his rifle overheated, switched to sidearm, threw grenades by instinct more than intent. His ears rang constantly, a high-pitched whine that never stopped. Enemy fire slammed into the gate again and again, testing it, probing for weakness. Ryan became the weakness. He took shrapnel in the arm and barely noticed. A burn scorched across his back, armor melting into skin. He screamed once, then locked it down. People ran past him. Some glanced back, eyes wide, confused. Some shouted words he couldn't understand. One small Sarah child tripped, crystalline skin catching the light as she fell. Ryan dropped to one knee, fired blind over his shoulder and grabbed her, shoving her toward the evac corridor. Go, he yelled, voice raw. She stared at him for half a heartbeat longer than necessary. Then she ran. The gate cracked. A deep, resonant fracture echoed through the stone, the sound of something ancient giving way. Ryan braced himself, teeth clenched. This is where it ends, a calm part of his mind observed. He felt strangely at peace with it. 3 hours later, reinforcement gunships screamed overhead. Ryan didn't hear them. He was on his feet barely, leaning against what remained of the gate, rifle hanging uselessly from a numb hand. Enemy bodies littered the approach. The civilians were gone. The line had held. When medics finally reached him, one of them stared. How the hell are you still Ryan decided within the first 10 seconds that the palace was a mistake. Not politically, not diplomatically, existentially. The ceilings were too high, arcing like frozen waves of light. The walls weren't walls so much as grown crystal, translucent and alive with slow-moving currents of color. Every step he took echoed far too loudly, as if the building itself were listening. He tugged at the collar of his dress uniform, which fit like it had been tailored for someone else's body, and possibly someone else's species. "This is absurd," he muttered. Lieutenant Chen walked beside him, posture rigid, eyes forward. "You're bleeding through your sleeve again." Ryan glanced down. A dark stain had spread beneath the crisp white fabric. "Great, I'm dripping on alien royalty." "Try not to," she said dryly. "I don't know if that's an insult or a declaration of war." They reached the reception hall, and Ryan felt it, the attention. It wasn't the kind humans were used to, no obvious staring, no whispered conversations. The Sarah nobility stood in layered formations along the hall, tall and impossibly composed, their crystalline skin refracting light in subtle, hypnotic ways. They weren't looking at him. They were assessing him, like a flawed artifact brought into a museum by mistake. Ryan straightened his spine out of pure reflex. "Remember," Chen murmured, barely moving her lips, "they value restraint. Do not interrupt. Do not volunteer information. And whatever you do." The massive doors at the far end of the hall opened. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was organic, like stone deciding to part. The court bowed in perfect unison. Ryan was a half-second late. He caught it immediately and felt every eye register the delay. Good start, he thought. Queen Valani's entered last. She didn't need guards, didn't need ornamentation. Power clung to her like gravity. She was taller than most of the nobles, her crystalline skin darker, deeper, the light beneath it slow and deliberate. Her robes flowed like liquid glass, and when she stopped, the room stopped with her. Her gaze found Ryan instantly. Not curious, not impressed, interested. "Sergeant Ryan Cole of Earth," she said. Her voice didn't echo, it arrived. "You stand before this court under extraordinary circumstances." Ryan swallowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." The translator hesitated for a fraction of a second before rendering his words. The delay was small. The court noticed. "You disobeyed direct orders," the Queen continued calmly. "You remained when logic, protocol, and command demanded retreat." Ryan didn't respond. "You held Atherin Gate alone," she said, 3 hours beyond projected failure. You preserved the evacuation of over 5,000 Sarah civilians. Her eyes sharpened. Why? Ryan's mouth opened, closed. This was the question he hadn't prepared for. He exhaled. Because they were still there. A ripple passed through the court, subtle, dangerous. "That is not an answer," one noble said coldly. Ryan turned slightly toward the voice, then stopped himself. Wrong protocol. He refocused on the Queen. "With respect," he said carefully, "that's the only one I have." Silence stretched. Queen Valani studied him as if peeling back layers no armor could hide. "You sought no recognition," she said. "You requested no reward." "I requested to go home." That landed harder than Ryan expected. The Queen tilted her head. "Interesting." She gestured with one slender hand. "Step forward." Ryan did. Every step felt like walking deeper into water. From behind the throne, a figure moved, and the room changed. Princess Lyana emerged without ceremony, wearing ceremonial armor instead of court robes. The crystal plating was elegant but scarred, used. Her presence didn't dominate the room the way her mother's did. It focused it. Her eyes, violet, luminous, unsettlingly sharp, locked onto Ryan. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. Ryan felt absurdly like he was back at the gate, outnumbered, exhausted, and being evaluated for survival. "Sergeant Cole," the Queen said, "you acted without obligation, without promise of reward. You chose sacrifice over safety." The Queen's voice hardened. "By Sarah law, such an act demands recognition equal to its weight." Ryan's stomach sank. Here it comes, he thought, the medal, the ceremony. The polite thank you before they ship me back to Earth. "Princess Lyana," the Queen continued, "has observed your actions." Lyana stepped closer. Her armor made no sound. She has judged them. Lyana stopped an arm's length from Ryan. Up close, the crystalline quality of her skin wasn't decorative. It was structural, like strength grown rather than worn. Her gaze didn't flicker. "Sergeant Ryan Cole," she said. Her voice was steady, young but unyielding. "You stood alone when every system said you would fall." Ryan said nothing. "You chose lives over obedience." Still nothing. "That choice," she continued, "is not weakness." The Queen's voice cut in, ceremonial now. "By ancient law and sacred custom, the one who protects the future without obligation earns the highest honor our people can bestow." Ryan's translator glitched, just slightly. Princess Lyana lifted her chin. "I choose him." The hall erupted, not chaos, but a formal, ritualized response that thundered through the crystal architecture. Ryan's brain shut down. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "You what?" Queen Valani's turned her gaze fully upon him. "Princess Lyana has chosen you as her consort." The words felt unreal, unattached to meaning. "You will stand beside her," the Queen continued, "bound by honor, duty, and shared authority." Ryan stared at Lyana. She didn't look triumphant, she looked certain. "This has to be a misunderstanding," Ryan said. "I'm human, I'm enlisted. I disobeyed orders, I'm not." "Qualified?" Lyana asked quietly. "Yes." She stepped closer. "I watched the battle feeds," she said. "I watched you refuse retreat. I watched you bleed. I watched you stand when logic demanded surrender." Her eyes didn't leave his. "That is what qualifies you." Ryan shook his head, pulse roaring in his ears. "I need time," he said. "I can't accept or refuse something like this on the spot." The Queen studied him, then nodded. "You will have until tomorrow's sunset." She rose. "Accept and you." Sleep was impossible. Ryan lay on the edge of a bed that was longer than his entire apartment back on Earth, staring up at a ceiling that slowly shifted colors like a patient, breathing sky. The palace was quiet in the way only massive structures could be, not silent but attentive. He felt watched, not in a threatening way, in an institutional way, as if the building itself were waiting to see what kind of man he was going to be. "I just wanted to go home," he muttered. His translator, still active, softly rendered the words into Sarath. Somewhere far beyond the walls, something chimed in response. Ryan sat up. That was new. He rubbed his face with both hands, then froze when pain flared across his back. The medics had sealed the worst of the burns, but every movement reminded him how close he'd come to dying. "This isn't a reward," he thought. "It's a trap with nice architecture." He stood and began pacing. If he accepted, he would never return to Earth. Not really. No rotations, no discharge, no quiet civilian life. He'd become a permanent fixture in a civilization he barely understood, bound to a woman he'd spoken to for less than 5 minutes. If he refused, he'd go home. Heroes welcome. Medals. A story that would be told and retold until it lost all meaning. And somewhere in this palace, a princess would rule alone, having bet her future on a human who walked away. That thought sat wrong in his chest. At precisely what his internal clock guessed was the middle of the night, there was a knock at the door. Ryan's hand went to his sidearm out of habit before he remembered he wasn't armed. "Enter," he said. The door slid open silently. A Sarah male stepped inside, tall and austere, his crystalline skin a muted gray-blue that suggested age rather than fragility. His robes were formal, his posture exact. "Sergeant Ryan Cole," he said. "I am Keeley's senior advisor to Princess Lyana." Ryan snorted softly. "Of course you are." Keeley's regarded him with something close to curiosity. "May I speak freely?" "At this point," Ryan said, "I don't think anything's off the table." Keeley's remained standing. "The formal presentation you witnessed was incomplete," he said. "This is not uncommon when ancient law intersects with human unpredictability." "That's one way to put it." Keeley's expression didn't change. "If you accept the consort bond, you will not be a symbol," he continued. "You will be a governing partner. You will advise Princess Lyana on matters of war, policy, and state. Your voice will carry legal authority. Ryan stared at him. That sounds less like a marriage and more like a life sentence. It is neither, Keeley's replied. It is service. Ryan laughed, short and humorless. Funny how that keeps coming up. Keeley's moved to the window, looking out over the glowing city far below. Our people believe leadership is a burden to be shared, he said, not a privilege to be hoarded. For generations, our royalty has forgotten that. Ryan folded his arms. And you think I'm the fix? I think, Keeley said carefully, that you embody something we have lacked. He turned. You acted without calculation, without assurance of survival, without expectation of reward. Ryan's jaw tightened. People keep saying that like it makes me special. It makes you dangerous, Keeley said. Ryan blinked. Dangerous to complacency, the advisor clarified. To corruption, to comfortable dishonor. Keeley stepped closer. But do not mistake this for benevolence. If you accept, you will be tested, relentlessly. There are those in the court who will wait eagerly for you to fail. And if I do, Keeley's didn't hesitate. You will weaken Princess Lyana's authority. The words landed hard. She will be judged by your failures as much as her own, Keeley's continued. That is the cost of partnership. Ryan looked away. That's a hell of a thing to put on someone. Yes, Keeley's agreed, which is why she did not choose lightly. He paused. The princess has requested to speak with you privately. Ryan closed his eyes for a second. When? Now, Keeley said, if you are willing. Ryan looked down at his rumpled fatigues, the bloodstains he hadn't bothered to hide. I'm not exactly presentable. Keeley's lips curved barely. She has seen you at your worst, he said. I doubt this will trouble her. The eastern gardens were unreal. Bioluminescent flora traced soft patterns along stone paths, their light pulsing gently as Ryan walked. The air carried a scent that reminded him faintly of rain and electricity. Princess Lyana stood near a fountain, her armor still on, helm removed. She looked less formal here, still regal but quieter, more real. She turned as he approached. Thank you for coming, she said. Ryan stopped a few feet away. Your advisor made a compelling case. Keeley's withdrew without a word. For a moment, neither of them spoke. I won't pretend this makes sense, Ryan said finally. I don't belong here. Lyana studied him. You belong wherever you choose to stand, she said. You proved that at the gate. Ryan shook his head. You're asking me to give up everything. My home, my family, my future as I understood it. Yes, she said simply. He looked at her, searching for hesitation. There was none. Why me? He asked quietly. Not the formal answer, the real one. Lyana stepped closer, resting her hand lightly on the stone edge of the fountain. I have spent my life surrounded by people who speak of duty, she said. But when duty becomes inconvenient, they find reasons to compromise. She met his eyes. You did not. Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. I watched you choose sacrifice, she continued. Not once, repeatedly, and I realized something terrifying. What? That I could rule perfectly by law and still fail my people. She took a breath. I need someone beside me who will remind me why power exists in the first. Ryan didn't answer her right away. The gardens breathed around them, light pulsing softly through alien leaves, water whispering over stone. It was peaceful in a way that felt unfair, given the weight of what she just placed in his hands. Fail together, he repeated quietly. That's not comforting. Lyana's mouth curved just slightly. It is honest. He let out a slow breath and looked away, out over the city. From here, Sarah looked impossibly serene. Towers of crystal and light, order, beauty, no sign of war, no sign of the people who would die if the wrong decision was made. I need to think, he said. Really think. You have until sunset, Lyana replied. No more, no less. She straightened, the princess returning in subtle ways, posture, stillness, distance. Whatever you choose, she added, I will not think less of you. Ryan met her gaze again. That's not what I'm worried about. Lieutenant Chen was waiting outside his quarters when he returned. Her arms were crossed. Her expression was the same one she wore before bad news briefings. "We need to talk," she said. Ryan nodded. "Yeah, that seems to be the theme." They went inside. Chen paced. Ryan sat. Command, it turned out, was not calm. "They're losing their minds," Chen said. "Legally, this is a disaster. You're being offered a binding position in a foreign government with sovereign authority. That requires approvals from about 17 different agencies." Ryan winced. 17. Minimum, and that's if everyone agrees. She stopped pacing and looked at him, "Which they won't. And if I refuse?" Chen exhaled. "Diplomatic fallout. The Sarah will accept it officially, but privately it'll be read as a rejection of their values. Some will say humanity doesn't respect sacrifice unless it's rewarded on our terms." Ryan rubbed his face. "So either way, it's political hell." "Yes," Chen said. "Congratulations." She hesitated, then softened. "But this isn't just about politics, is it?" "No," Ryan said quietly, "it's not." Chen sat across from him. "Ryan, if you accept this, you're not coming back. Not really. Your parents, your sister, you'll see them on screens across years of lag. You'll miss funerals, weddings, normal life." "I know. And you're still considering it." He nodded. "Why?" Ryan stared at the floor for a long moment. "Because if I walk away," he said slowly, "I know exactly how that'll feel. Like retreating while someone else is still behind the line." Chen swallowed. "That instinct of yours," she said. "It's going to ruin you someday." "Maybe," Ryan replied. "But it's also the only reason anyone made it out of that gate." Silence settled between them. Finally, Chen sighed. "For what it's worth," she said. "If anyone could survive being dropped into alien royalty with zero prep, it's you." "That's not reassuring." "I didn't say it was," she said, managing a small smile. "Just accurate." By midday, Ryan had stopped pacing. Not because he was calm, but because the decision had settled into place with the same grim clarity he felt at Atherin Gate. He requested a formal audience. The chamber this time was smaller. Less ceremonial, more dangerous. Queen Valani's waited, hands folded, expression unreadable. Lyana stood beside her, face carefully neutral. "Sergeant Cole," the Queen said, "you have reached a decision." Ryan straightened. "I have, Your Majesty." The air felt heavier. "I accept the consort bond," he said. "I will stand beside Princess Lyana and serve the Sarah people to the best of my ability." For the first time, something flickered across the Queen's face. "Approval or calculation?" "So be it," Valani said. "Understand this, human, many will seek to see you fail. Your weakness will be used against my daughter." Ryan met her gaze evenly. "I won't pretend I won't make mistakes," he said. "But I won't abandon the responsibility you're placing on me." The Queen studied him for a long moment. "Very well," she said. "Prepare him." She turned to leave, then paused. "Princess Lyana," she added, "you may have a moment with your chosen." When they were alone, Lyana finally looked at him. "You are certain," she said quietly. Ryan exhaled. "I'm terrified. I think that counts." A faint smile touched her lips. "Good. Certainty without fear is arrogance." She stepped closer, slowly, giving him time to pull away. "I am trusting you with my future," she said, "and with the future of my people." Ryan nodded once. "I know." She extended her hand. He took it. Her skin was warm, unexpectedly so. The ceremony was nothing like the battlefield. Ryan decided that was the problem. At Atherin Gate, danger had been honest. Loud, fast. You knew where you stood, where the enemy was, and what failure looked like. Here, everything was beautiful and sharp. The ceremonial hall shimmered with refracted light as Sarah nobility assembled in layered ranks. Crystal pillars rose like frozen lightning, catching the glow of the setting sun as it bled through the translucent ceiling. Music, low, harmonic, almost mathematical, vibrated through the floor rather than the air. Ryan stood beside Lyana, dressed in formal Sarah attire that still felt wrong on his body. Flowing fabric brushed his boots. A crystalline pendant rested heavy against his chest, marking him as consort. Every eye in the room was on him, not openly hostile, not welcoming, evaluating. Like I'm a structural weakness, he thought. waiting to see if I crack. Queen Vellani stepped forward, her presence quieting the hall without effort. By Sarah law, she intoned, we recognize a bond formed not by blood or conquest but by shared duty. Ryan barely heard the words. His translator lagged slightly, struggling with ceremonial phrasing, but the weight of the moment pressed in regardless. Lyana stood perfectly still beside him, unwavering. When the queen gestured, an attendant stepped forward carrying a crystalline token, the symbol of the consort bond. It pulsed faintly with internal light. Lyana accepted it, then turned to Ryan. In return, the queen said, the chosen offers a symbol of equal weight. Ryan froze. This hadn't been in the briefing. His pulse spiked. He searched his mind desperately. Everything he owned was military issue, functional, replaceable. Nothing that carried meaning in this place. The pause stretched. Whispers stirred at the edges of the hall. Good, a traitorous thought whispered. This is where they prove you don't belong. Ryan swallowed. Then he reached up and unpinned the patch from his dress uniform. Worn, faded. The insignia of the 3rd Expeditionary Force. Names written in permanent marker on the back, brothers, sisters, some still alive, some not. He stepped forward. I don't have wealth, he said, voice steady despite the pounding in his ears. I don't have status or lineage. He held the patch out to Lyana. This is my unit patch. It represents the people I served with. The family I'm leaving behind to stand here. The hall was silent. Lyana took the patch carefully, turning it over, reading the names. Understanding crossed her face, not ceremonial, not rehearsed. This human offers sacrifice, she said, her voice carrying clearly. Not power, not prestige, but truth. A ripple moved through the court. Not approval, reassessment. The queen nodded once. The bond is sealed. Light flared. The pendant warmed against Ryan's chest, not painfully but insistently, like something acknowledging his presence. It was done. There was no turning back. The reception afterward was worse. Smiles that didn't reach eyes. Polite congratulations layered with barely concealed doubt. Nobles who spoke to Lyana while addressing Ryan as if he were a decorative fixture. One Sarah lord lingered too long, his crystalline skin tinged with faint gold. Princess, he said smoothly, your choice is bold. Lyana inclined her head. It is considered. The noble's gaze slid to Ryan. Humans are known for impulsive bravery, he said, less so for sustained wisdom. Ryan felt it then, the familiar itch in his spine that preceded bad decisions. He smiled. Lucky for me, he said, I'm surrounded by experts. The noble stiffened. Lyana's fingers brushed Ryan's wrist, subtle, a warning. He'd spoken out of turn. First day, he thought, already screwing it up. Later, in a private antechamber, Lyana faced him. That was unnecessary, she said calmly. Ryan exhaled. He was testing me. Yes, she agreed. And you responded. Wrong answer. Not wrong, she said, but not wise. She met his gaze. Here, words are weapons. You do not swing them casually. Ryan nodded slowly, understood. She softened just slightly. You will learn, she said, but you must survive long enough to do so. That lesson came sooner than expected. The next morning, Ryan was summoned to his first council session, not as observer, as participant. The chamber was smaller, more intimate, and far more dangerous. Military commanders, political advisors, economic stewards, power concentrated and tense. A border dispute flickered across the central display. Voices rose quickly. Deploy the 3rd Fleet. Demonstrate strength. End this decisively. Ryan listened, and felt the same cold certainty he'd felt at the gate. Civilians were in the projected strike zone. He glanced at Lyana. She hadn't spoken yet. This, he realized, is the real test. Ryan stood, the room stilled. Before we deploy anything, he said, choosing each word carefully, I want to ask a question. Several nobles bristled. What happens to the people who live here? Ryan continued, highlighting the civilian clusters. On both sides. A commander scoffed. Collateral is inevitable. Ryan met his gaze. So is resentment, he said, and resentment outlives wars. Silence followed. Lyana watched him closely. Ryan felt the weight of the room press down. This time he didn't smile. "This is where I held a gate," he said quietly. "Because no one else would. I won't stand by and watch us create another one." The council erupted. Arguments, objections, anger. Ryan sat back down, heart pounding. The backlash came quietly. No public accusations. No dramatic confrontations. Just doors that stopped opening as easily. Ryan noticed it first in the small things. Invitations to strategy briefings that arrived late or not at all. Conversations that paused when he entered a room. Advisors who suddenly addressed Lyana with meticulous formality and him with careful neutrality, as if he were a volatile element best handled with insulated gloves. "They're isolating you," Lyana said that evening. They were alone in her study, crystal walls dimmed to a soft twilight glow. Data projections hovered between them, unread and ignored. Ryan shrugged. "I've been isolated before." "This is different," she replied. "On the battlefield, isolation is a condition. Here, it is a tactic." He considered that. "So what's the play?" he asked. "Wait it out." Lyana shook her head. "No, they will not wait. They are testing whether you are a liability I will abandon, or a commitment I will defend." Ryan felt a tightening in his chest. "And if you defend me, then they escalate." The words settled between them. The escalation came 2 days later. A formal motion was submitted to the High Council, procedurally flawless, politically devastating. Proposal: a review of the consort's authority in military and diplomatic matters, framed as concern, disguised as prudence, designed to cut Ryan out of any decision that actually mattered. "They're not attacking you," Ryan said, scanning the document. "They're attacking us." "Yes," Lyana agreed, "which means we respond together." Ryan looked up. "How?" Lyana hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. It was the first time Ryan had ever seen her unsure. "My instinct," she said slowly, "is to counter with authority, publicly reaffirm your position. Force compliance." Ryan grimaced. "That'll just prove their point, that I'm being propped up by royal decree." She didn't disagree. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "On Earth," he said, "this is where someone like me would step back. Reduce friction. Let the institution stabilize." Lyana's gaze sharpened. "And sacrifice the principle to preserve harmony." Ryan met her eyes. "Sometimes that's leadership." The silence that followed was different from before. He decrossed a line. Lyana stood. "When I chose you," she said quietly, "I chose someone who would stand beside me, not behind me." Ryan stood as well. "And I chose this because I don't want to become the reason your rule fractures," he replied. "If stepping back prevents that." "No," she interrupted, voice firm. "If you step back now, they learn that pressure works, that my partnerships are conditional." Her eyes burned with restrained anger. "They will never stop." Ryan felt the weight of her words and the truth in them, but another truth pressed just as hard. "If I stay in," he said, "they'll use me as proof that you're compromised, that you let sentiment override judgment." Lyana stared at him. "You think I chose you sentimentally?" "No," Ryan said. "I think they'll say you did." That was the crack, not loud, not explosive, but real. For the first time, they were no longer aligned. The council session the next morning was brutal. Arguments sharpened into accusations. Not against Ryan directly, but against process, against precedent, against unnecessary risk. Ryan sat through it, jaw tight, saying nothing. Until Lyana spoke. "The motion is denied," she said. "The consort's authority remains unchanged." A noble rose immediately. "Then you force this council to accept a human's judgment over centuries of Sarah governance." Ryan stood. Slowly, every instinct screamed not to, but this time silence would be surrender. "No," he said evenly. "You're being asked to accept accountability." The chamber erupted. Lyana turned sharply. "Ryan." He kept going. "You're afraid of what I represent," he said. "Not because I'm human, but because I remind you that leadership has a cost." That was when he realized he'd gone too far. Lyana raised her hand for silence, but the damage was done. Later, in the privacy of her chambers, the argument finally broke free. "You undermined me," Lyana said, voice tight. "In my own council." "I defended the principle," Ryan shot back. "The same one you chose me for." "You took control of the room," she replied. "That was not your role." "I didn't ask for a role," he said. "I asked not to let people die for politics." Her eyes flashed. "And you think I would?" "No," Ryan said. "I think you might be forced to choose." Silence slammed down. This time it hurt. Lyana turned away. "You do not understand this place as well as you think," she said. "Power here does not forgive disruption." Ryan's voice softened. "Neither does conscience." She looked back at him, hurt, anger, something dangerously close to doubt. "For the first time," she said quietly, "I am not certain you are helping." The words cut deeper than any shrapnel. Ryan nodded once. "Then maybe," he said. "This is the part where I learned the cost of standing." Neither of them spoke after that. The palace lights dimmed. The consequences did not arrive dramatically. There were no guards at Ryan's door, no public censure, no raised voices echoing through crystal halls. Instead, there was a summons, formal, polite, final. Ryan stood alone in the antechamber outside the High Council, hands clasped behind his back, dress robes heavy on his shoulders. He had worn armor into battle without fear. These robes felt heavier. The doors opened. The council chamber was full. Every major noble house, military command, civil authority, and at the center Queen Valani's. Lyana stood to her right. She did not look at Ryan. "Consort Ryan Cole," the queen said, voice even. "You are summoned to answer for conduct that has disrupted the balance of governance." Ryan inclined his head. "I understand, Your Majesty." "You spoke beyond your mandate," a noble said. "You challenged authority not granted to you," said another. "You forced the princess into political vulnerability," a third added. Ryan listened, did not interrupt. When the accusations ended, the queen turned to Lyana. "Princess," Valani said, "do you believe your consort acted in alignment with your authority?" The room held its breath. This was the moment. Ryan felt it with absolute clarity. Whatever happened next would define everything that followed. Lyana closed her eyes, only for a heartbeat. Then she spoke. "He acted from conviction," she said, "and conviction is not treason." Murmurs rippled. "But," Lyana continued, her voice tightening, "he acted without full understanding of our internal dynamics. His intervention escalated resistance and endangered the stability of my position." Ryan's chest tightened. She was being honest, which made it worse. "I take responsibility for choosing him," Lyana said. "But leadership also requires consequence." Ryan finally looked at her. She met his gaze now, steady, pained, resolute. "I propose," she said, "that the consort be formally restricted from council participation until he completes full Sarah governance certification." The words were precise, measured, a demotion disguised as education. The queen considered. "So ruled," Valani said. "Consort Cole will be removed from advisory authority effective immediately. He will undergo instruction and observation. Any further breach will result in permanent dissolution of his political role." The gavel crystal ceremonial struck. It was done. Ryan bowed. "I accept the ruling." He did not look at Lyana again. The isolation that followed was real this time. Ryan was not confined, but he was absent from councils, from briefings, from decisions that mattered. He attended instruction sessions with tutors who treated him like a liability rather than a student. He walked palace corridors that no longer paused for him. Lyana did not seek him out, not because she didn't care, because she could not afford to. That was the true cost. Weeks passed. Ryan learned Sarah governance the hard way. History, failures, compromises that had kept the civilization intact by bending rather than breaking. He began to understand what Lyana had meant. Power here did not resist fracture. It absorbed it, and those who pushed too hard were not destroyed. They were neutralized. One evening, as Ryan studied alone in a side gallery, Keelys appeared. You paid the price, the advisor said quietly. Ryan didn't look up. Is it enough? For now, Keeley's paused. She protected you, he added, in the only way that would work. Ryan closed his eyes. I know. And Keeley's continued. You protected her from becoming the ruler who bends too easily. Ryan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. So we both lost, he said. Keeley's tilted his head. Or both learned. They spoke again weeks later, not in council chambers, not in gardens. In a quiet archive overlooking the city, Lyana approached without ceremony. You are learning, she said. Ryan nodded, slowly. She studied him. I hurt you. Yes, Ryan said honestly. She accepted that. I had to choose between defending you and preserving the throne, she said. I chose the throne. Ryan met her gaze. That's what a ruler does. And what a partner must endure, she replied. Silence settled, but this time it was not hostile. It was shared. I don't regret choosing you, Lyana said quietly, but I now understand the cost of partnership more clearly. Ryan considered her words. So do I, he said. Standing doesn't always mean speaking. Sometimes it means holding position and waiting. She nodded. That lesson, she said, may have saved us both. The crisis did not return with alarms. It came as data, quiet, incremental, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Ryan noticed it first during instruction. Trade routes subtly rerouted. Civilian infrastructure quietly reinforced near contested borders. Joint oversight committees forming, not announced, not celebrated. The same solution he had argued for in council was being implemented, just without his name attached. He sat back in his chair, datapad resting against his chest, and let out a slow breath. So that's how it's done, he thought. Not by winning the room, by surviving long enough to influence it. Keeley's confirmed it days later. The princess has adopted your framework, the advisor said as they walked through a lesser-used corridor. Incrementally, without provoking resistance. Ryan nodded, smart. Yes, Keeley's agreed. And expensive. Politically. In every way. Ryan stopped walking. Then why do it? Keeley's looked at him carefully. Because it is right. Ryan smiled faintly. His return was not announced. There was no ceremony, no reversal decree. One morning, his name simply appeared again on a council attendance roster. Lower priority, advisory only, conditional. Lyana did not comment on it. She did not need to. In council, Ryan spoke less. But when he did, people listened. Not because he was consort, because his words now came with restraint. The court noticed. The military noticed. The nobles noticed most of all. He had learned the language of power here, not volume. Timing. They stood together again at Atherin Gate months later. The gate had been rebuilt, not as it was, but stronger, integrated with civilian evacuation corridors. Redundant defenses layered not just for battle, but for escape. Lyana placed a crystal at the memorial field. Ryan placed a stone beside it. No one objected this time. You've changed, Lyana said quietly as they walked back toward the palace. So have you, Ryan replied. She considered that. I am less idealistic, she said. More patient. And more dangerous, Ryan added. She smiled just barely. And you? Ryan looked out over the city. I still stand when I need to, he said. I've just learned when not to rush forward alone. They stopped at the edge of a balcony overlooking Sarah. The city glowed, alive, protected. You once asked what I really wanted from you, Ryan said. Lyana turned to him. I remember. I think I finally understand what I'm doing here, he continued. I'm not here to change your world.